أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا
When a non-Muslim generally is introduced to some of the basic rituals in Islam, one finds an element of surprise in terms of some of the practices that you'd find amongst Muslims. For example, prior to prayer, a Muslim is obliged 5 times a day to engage in what we would call the wudu. And that basically involves washing of the hands, the feet, the face, the arms. All this is done prior to prayer. Psychologically, it serves as a purpose in terms of which the individual is not just simply washing for the purposes of purification, but also is mentally gearing himself up for preparing himself to face God himself. In the Quran, in chapter 5, verse 7, you read the expression, "O you who believe, when you rise up for prayer, wash your faces and your hands as far as the elbows, and wipe your heads and wash your feet to the ankles." That's a direct commandment that's given by God Almighty in the Holy Quran. One finds that this practice itself amongst Muslims is not particularly institutionalized, because the Islamic belief is that this was a practice that has been performed from time immemorial. If one has to look at the 40th chapter of the book of Exodus, chapter verse 31 to 32, we read an expression about Moses, Aaron and their sons washing the hands and the feet thereat before they entered into the tent of the congregation. They washed specifically as the Lord commanded Moses. In Acts chapter 21 verse 26, we read about Paul taking the men and the next day purifying them entered into the temple. So as you can find from the Islamic perspective, this actual act of wudu is not something which is specifically institutionalized within the framework of what Muslims might or might not do, but is a practice that has been engaged in from time immemorial, from the time of Abraham, Solomon, David, Jesus, and the last and final prophet, Muhammad. May the peace of God be upon them all. When Muslims generally worship or recite passages of the Quran or seek the blessings of God in unison together with the faithful from all over the world, they face one specific direction. and that is a great mosque in Mecca. The Kaaba, or the qibla, as one would basically call the direction in terms of which Muslims would turn their faces and pray in universal brotherhood and sisterhood towards a specific direction. In the Holy Quran, in chapter 2, verse 144, the commandment is given to Muslims and to believers, proclaiming, "Turn thy face towards the sacred mosque, and O you who have accepted faith, wheresoever they may be, turn your faces towards it." This turning of one's face or facing the Qibla in Mecca does not in any way suggest or seem to suggest that God himself resides in Mecca or has some sort of apartment in Mecca, residing there with his kids or his wife. It's simply the universal focal point in terms of which Muslims pray. The Quran in fact says in many other passages, it does not matter whether you turn your faces towards the east or towards the west, for wheresoever you turn, the presence of God is there. But the idea of turning in a specific direction is to emphasize this entire spirit of unity, this entire universal brotherhood and universal sisterhood that one does not find in any other religious system. This idea of turning oneself to a particular direction is also not unique. It's not something which is also institutionalized. It's not institutionalized because of the fact that this was something which was practiced from time immemorial. One has to only have a cursory glance at the 6th chapter of the book of Daniel, verse 10, which speaks about the prophet Daniel, when he went into his house, went up into his roomy chamber, and his window being open in his chamber towards Jerusalem, turned in that direction 3 times a day and bowed down, offered his prayers, and fell upon his face in worship to the one and only God. So this practice of worshipping towards a particular direction or facing what we would call the Qibla is not something which is unique. It's something which has been practiced from time immemorial. Prior to the Qibla, the direction being made Mecca, previously, certainly in the classical period, the earliest period within the development of Islam in Arabia, the Qibla was in fact Jerusalem, and subsequently one had a transition. This idea of turning in towards a particular direction is simply reflective of the universality of the Islamic faith.